Khoj's workshop on decisions and outcomes. We're going to try to look at decisions from a Guru perspective and see how we can implement them in our lives. Right? Everything you're going to see in the presentation is just stuff that I've come across in doing research or found out that Safeguard asked me to speak, so I putting the slides together. So this is stuff that I learned a lot from putting this together, and I hope you guys will learn at least something from the presentation as well. With that said, first of all, I'd like to congratulate everyone for coming here. I was listening to a katha by Bindar Singh, and in the katha he said that most of us who come to the Gurdwara, right, we've all experienced a lightning bolt once in our life. We've experienced that lightning bolt, and we've had this like sense of illumination, or even like that split millisecond. And that light that we experienced, that feeling that we had, we try to seek it over and over again. That's what keeps us coming back. So the fact that you guys took your time out to come here for a Saturday shows that most likely we've been struck by that lightning bolt once. And our goal now is to try to find out how we can have constant light and have constant information. And so hopefully we can do that with someone such as yourself. So with that said, let's just start off by making things clear. What this presentation is not. Right? This presentation is not going to be something that I'm going to just give you like a website and you're going to have all the answers laid out for you, and you're going to know how to do everything in your life from now on. Right? I don't even know what to do 5 minutes from now, so I can't tell you what to do in your life. But hopefully what it will do is it will lay out some steps. Right? It'll lay out some steps, get you thinking, and not leave a huge gap in the middle. Hopefully there'll be some logic to say, okay, I saw these stories, I saw these things in the presentation, and now how can I actually apply that to my life? And so that's the goal. So when I found out that I had to present here, I was kind of nervous, right? So I said, you know what do I do when I don't know the answer to anything? What does anybody do, right? You go to Google. So I went on Google, and I put in how to make decisions. And the first hit comes up with like a 10-step guide on how to make decisions. It said I needed a paper, a pencil, I needed to make a to-do list, needed to make some like decision branches, then needed to weigh pros and cons, make a list. It sounded really confusing. So I said, okay, you know what? I want to go to the 6-step guide, which is like the third link on Google. I'm like, surely this has to be a little bit easier than the 10-step guide. And that led to a drawing like this. This is actually from that link. So after seeing that, I was like, you know what? I give up with Google. Let's just go and look at what 6 has said. So looking at what 6 has said, Bhai Gurdashi says, Gur Sikhi da karim ehe, Gur Furmaye, Gur Sikh karna. That the Gur Sikh's job is simple. That the Guru says something and he does it. That's how we make decisions. That the Guru says it and we do it. Now, can somebody tell me why we would just do anything that the Guru says? Anyone? I'm going to wait, so I'm fine. Yeah.
We would do what the Guru says because that's what makes us Dharma.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah. Well, what causes you to do that? Right? What causes you to say, I want to follow the Guru?
We're all looking for benefits.
We're looking for benefits?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else?
Because the Guru said he's going to come.
Sure. Well, how about love? Right? We just do something because we love Guru Sahib so much that no matter what Guru Sahib says, we do it. Right? We've all read books, watched movies, seen TV shows where the protagonist is saying something like, oh, I'm so in love with him or her that I just can't stop thinking about him and her. I'll do anything for him and her or her. Right? We've all seen that. But do we have that love for Guru Sahib? That's the question. The question is, do we have the love for Guru Sahib to say, I'm willing to do whatever Guru Sahib says? Right? We've probably heard the Sakhi of Guru Nanak Dev Ji telling Bhai Lana Ji, "Ke murda kha, there's a dead body here, eat it." Right? So most of us, when we hear that example, we're kind of grossed out, right? We're like, oh my God, why is Guru Nanak Dev Ji saying eat that body? But what does Bhai Lana say? He says, Guru Sahib, where do I start from? Do I start from the head or the feet? Right? So it doesn't matter what the Guru says. The Guru can say, you have to wear a clown nose and clown shoes. to say, yes, I'll do it. Because you just have so much pyar for what Guru Sahib is saying that you don't ever second guess them. Right? We all read Jin Prem Kiyo Nahi Prabh Paya. What does that mean? So hopefully, get you thinking a little bit, and we'll move on to some examples. So let's start off with a hypothetical. Say it's a hot day, and you have a couple dollars in your pocket, and you decide to go to 7-Eleven and get a Slurpee. Right? And on the way there, you see a guy that looks like this. For those of you who can't read the sign, it says, "Hungry, homeless, please help, God bless." He seems genuine to you, right? He seems like he needs the money for the food. It looks like he has any food. What do? It's a simple question, right? Happens every day, especially in big cities. That's great. That's great. But you basically have three choices, right? You could, one of the choices is go take him to the Gurdwara, which is not up here. But another one is you go inside the 7-Eleven, you buy the guy something to eat, right? And you go home and you say, you know what, I'll just have a glass of water. It's fine. Or you go inside, you buy the Slurpee, and on the way out, you just give him a little bit of change to make yourself feel happy. Right? Because you feel like you helped, you gave him a quarter. Right? And the other one is, you go inside, you buy the Slurpee, on the way out, you think to yourself, this guy's a hobo. He's lazy, he doesn't do anything, he's not like he's contributed to anything in my life, so why should I help him? Right? And most of us usually fall into B or C. Right? We rarely do A. We rarely say, yeah, come inside, let's go get you something to eat. We usually do B, and sometimes we even say, oh, this guy doesn't deserve it. Because all of a sudden, who deserves charity, we can determine that. And the other thing to keep in mind is that 1 out of 4 homeless people in the United States are veterans. It's not like these people haven't contributed to our life, to our life at all. They fought in wars such as Iraq, Afghanistan, Desert Storm. And so 1 out of 4 people that you see that's homeless has actually fought in the military before for our safety. So they've already done something and they come back with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Right? So what we may consider lazy may actually be a mental condition that they came back with. But are we really thinking through that, or are we jumping to a judgment really quickly? What are we doing? Right? And so, according to this chart, 50,000 homeless veterans are in California alone. So if we do 1 in 4, we multiply that for 200,000 homeless people in California. This is our Sangha. This is the community around us. Right? It's great that we have Langar and Gurdwara, and we should. We absolutely should. But what about these guys? So let's look at Sikh history. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji is given 20 rupees, right? We've all heard the story of Sacha Soda. Right? He's given 20 rupees to go start a business. And on the way he sees hungry sadhus in meditation and asks them, oh, do you need anything? And they said, we haven't eaten in a few days. So what does Guru Sahib do? He goes, makes langar, gives them langar. We hear the story from the time we're 2 or 3 years old, and we hear it, even now when some of us are 30 years old. But how does this apply? What's the big deal? That small decision means that in thousands of gurdwaras today, we have langar. You can go to Darbar Sahib 24 hours a day and get langar. Right? So no matter what, there are thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people, that are getting langar every day, 3 times a day, as many times a day as they want. Because Guru Sahib started something with as simple as feeding hungry sadhus. Right? Something so simple, that's divinely inspired, a small decision, makes such a huge difference. Because that small decision is keeping in mind Sikh principles. So even, we say, well, that's such an insignificant thing. If I don't give this guy, a couple dollars to eat, what's the big deal? It's a big deal for him, right? I know when I get hungry, I'm like, Mom, where's food? Right? Every day I'm like, Mom, I'm food, right? It's been half an hour extra. I want more food. Right? Why is dinner half an hour late today? Right? Some of these guys aren't eating in days. Right? And listen to them. Talk to them. See what their stories are. See what they've had to go through. And that's what Siddhartha says. Right? It's not like this is something that only Guru Sahibs are supposed to do, or something that Sikhs can't do. Sikh Rath Mirada says, Guru ka Sikh Garib di Rasna nu Guru ki Golak Jane. Right? So Sikh Rath Mirada took this quote from Ratnama by Jopa Singh, and in there it says that a Guru Sikh ought to see a poor person's mouth as the Guru's Golak. So we should see no difference in giving $1, $5, $10 to the Gurdwara side and giving $1, $5, $10, $1 million to start serving homeless people or start serving people who need the food or who need any type of service. Right? So what's our responsibility today? Langar should extend outside of the Gurdwara. Langar doesn't end at the Gurdwara side. Right? Great. We have things like success that people work on, and that's great that they do that. But why don't we have something that's more regular? Why don't we say that San Jose Gurdwara side, Fremont Gurdwara side, the Sangha from there, the youth from there are going to take responsibility at the Fremont homeless shelter or the San Jose homeless shelter one day out of the month? Is it really that hard? I know high school students do that once a week, right? And yet, we're more concerned about spending, Sikh money, the Sikh Sanghat's money in other places, instead of spending it in ways that we can do proper prachar. Right? We have a responsibility to serve the needy regardless of their race, religion, socioeconomic status. It's not like Langar is just designed for Sikhs. Right? Langar is designed for everyone, right? It's the message that Guru Sahib is giving is universal. And the universality of that message, because it's universal, we need to treat it as universal. We need to implement it universally. We can't simply pick and choose and say, I think this guy's a good guy, this guy's a bad guy, and therefore, because he's a different religion, or because he's poor, or he's black or white or yellow or whatever, that we're not going to help him. So why don't we start this? Right? Why? I think there are probably 2 or 3 community service clubs in every high school, right? Whether it's started by Kiwanis, whether it's started by the Masons. Why don't we have a Guru Nanak, homeless shelter anywhere in the world? Why don't we have like a Guru Nanak clinic? We have them at the Gurdwara, that's great, we should. But why don't we have them outside? So, as you can probably tell, I really like food. So, I'm going to give you another food example. And so many of us heard of Sant Tarun Singh ji, Rampur Khede Wale. And here's an example from Sanji's life. This is taken from his book, Se Kaneha. And you can actually read this book, it's translated in English. So here I'm going to meet some volunteers in a second. So get ready to volunteer. So Sanji was walking through a village on the way to meet a friend who's fallen sick, right? And on the way there, he comes across a sugarcane field. Right? We've all seen this in India. You're driving across India, and you see a field of sugar canes, right? And so what happens is Sanji thinks, he says, you know what, I want to take a few sugar canes. I'm kind of hungry. Right? I want to take a few sugar canes. It's not a big deal, right? But then it kind of starts this internal struggle in his head. Sanji says, do I take it? Is it stealing? Is it okay? How many of us would even think twice about this example? I know I've taken a sugar cane from a field in India. I know I've done it, right? So, but how many of us would even think twice? And the problem is, and what separates Gursikhs from people who aren't listening to the Guru's message are the fact that the Gursikhs are going to think twice. And so here's the decision. It's simple. You don't take any of the sugar canes, and you're on your merry way. You take sugar canes after telling yourself, you know what, there are thousands of sugar canes in the field, they'll never notice. Right? There are thousands of them. If I take 1 or 2, not a big deal, right? Nobody's ever going to even be able to tell. It's not like anybody's watching me. Right? Or is there? And then the third choice is that you take the sugar canes and you never think about it again. Because it's such an insignificant decision in your life that you don't even ever think that it was wrong or ever even question whether it was wrong. You just take the sugar canes, you eat the sugar canes, and that's it. It's done. Right? There's nothing else to it. But what was Samji's thought process? Does anybody want to read this? Alright. You guys are quiet. So Santi writes, my inner voice subconscious whispered that undoubtedly the fuel wouldn't lose much if I removed 1 or 2 sugar canes. But taking the sugar canes without consent is theft. Theft is theft, whether it's a penny or thousands of pounds. So already he's trying to rationalize this. As he's walking, he's still seeing the field. He's still walking, and he's thinking to himself, well, is it theft? Is it not theft? Well, isn't theft, does theft really matter on how much you're stealing? And then the thought process continues. He says, well, whenever a needy person wants vegetables or sugarcane from our fields, they take it. Right? They don't bother to ask us for permission, because Santi also had a field. So he said, people don't ask us for permission, they take it all the time. And then he said that even if these people do take the fruit or vegetables or anything, well, it's still theft. Right? We don't think of them as good people, right? Afterwards, when you find your field ravaged and you see like people took some sugar canes that you worked hard to plant, you're not going to be like, oh, good for them, oh, great, they're such nice people. You're going to be like, oh, you're probably going to think, oh, I hate this person. He just took all this thing that I worked really hard for and just took it away in a second without even asking. Maybe you would have given it to them if they asked. Right? A lot of times, the stuff that we take, if you ask people, they'll just give it to you. Right? It's not like somebody's going to be like, oh, no, you can't have a sugar cane. Most likely, they'll give you the sugar cane, but the thing is, you never ask. And he says, we still describe them as thieves. And we say that this person must be desperate, that they've stolen these things from us. And they damage crops in the process. So then the process continues, right? He says, my inner voice goaded me to think that what will people say if I was caught grabbing a couple of sugar canes? Surely they will say that Tarun Singh wears the garb of a Gurmukh, claiming to follow a spiritual path. But given half the chance, he steals like any other ordinary person. Whenever people will talk of your indiscretion, you will be defamed, and so too will the name of your Guru and Sikhism. This cannot be allowed to happen at any cost. I cannot take the sugar canes. So ultimately, what causes Santiji to make the right decision is he realizes that he looks a certain way. That if Guru Sahib gave us this sarup, it's not like he gave us this sarup, he says, okay, tusi dastana, bano, bana pao, and that's it. And then all of a sudden we're Sikhs. There's a responsibility that comes with it. When Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji Shahadat happened, no Sikhs came forward to say, yes, we're Sikhs of the Guru. And then Guru Gobind Singh Ji says, well, we got to change that. We give him a distinct identity. So if I go ahead and say I'm not a Sikh, they're like, oh, well, yeah, well, you look like one, so you're lying, right? So how many of us can steal something and then somebody goes, you're a Sikh, right? I thought you're not supposed to steal. Are we really going to be like, oh, I'm not a Sikh? We can't do that because of the identity we're given. So we can't back out of things that we do wrong. This thought is more than just giving us a student, it's giving us a responsibility. Right? The way we look is giving us a responsibility. The fact that you wear your kafad, it tells you that you have to act as if these mean something. So let's look at the outcome. So he was still, debating in his head, and he says he comes, now he's walked some distance, and he's like up to the sugarcane field, right? And he says, I walked about halfway past the field, and Tarun Singh appeared from the middle of the sugarcane crop. And he was holding an armful full of broken shoots, because apparently people steal these all the time. And he's holding this, and he sees him, and he says, Fateh to him. He says, Fateh to Santi. And then what happens? After exchanging Fateh, he says, some person is going through my field, stealing my sugarcane. Right? And not only is he stealing them, he's eating half of it and then throwing the rest of it away. And like in my field. So now my field has like all these like sugar canes I have to pick up too. And so he says, here are some shoots from yesterday. He's showing somebody, look, somebody did this yesterday. And he's like, I've been sitting here in the sugarcane fields for the last few days. I'm going to catch the person who does it. right? I want to catch this person. I want to teach him a lesson. I want to take him to the village council, and I want to make sure that they're taught a lesson. And he said, right now I was lying. That's what I was doing. I was waiting for the guy to come by so I could grab him. And then I'm so lucky I saw a man of God like yourself. Could you imagine that? Here Santiji is thinking about taking the sugarcane himself, and Sardar Uttam Singh is saying, oh, it's good that you came by, you're a man of God. Could you imagine how he must have felt inside? Right? Like, it's one thing to just read this story, but could you imagine if that happened to you? You just barely made that right decision. Like, it took you like 5 minutes to make the right decision, and somebody's like, oh, it's great that you came by because you would make sure that nobody would ever do something like that. And why? Because sometimes you looked a certain way. Because he dressed a certain way. So, yeah, so it's great that we know this about Tarun Singh, and that we can say, okay, yeah, I obviously shouldn't steal. But the thing is, how should we make decisions? Is our generation doing it the right way? Right? Our generation, if you go to a Gurmat camp, during recreation they take them to Chuck E. Cheese, a bowling alley, or a roller skating rink, right? Why is it that the Sikh kids get kicked out of all these places? Right? Why is it that the Sikh kids, the ones wearing Barna, the ones wearing Dastana, are getting kicked out of these places? And when you go and you call up Chuck E. Cheese and you say, yeah, I'm with Fremont Gurdwara Sahib, I'm with San Jose Gurdwara Sahib, I want to book Chuck E. Cheese for a Gurmat camp. They're like, oh no, you can't come here, we're full. Right? Why is it they go to the bowling alley, they cause more damage to the vending machines and the arcade games there than they paid for the bowling? Right? I mean, you know how we say little children are supposed to be innocent. Our kids aren't even innocent. Our kids start off young. Right? I mean, at Chuck E. Cheese, I remember like kids figuring out how to get the machine to read extra tickets. You could buy a ticket for a cent. Right? Are we that desperate? Right? They're figuring out how to get this 100 tickets to read as 200. I mean, I gotta admit, right? We're pretty dang smart if we can do that. Right? We're pretty smart if we can do that. But is that the right way to get an extra $1? Why not just learn how to play the game better? So, I mean, it's not like, in Guru Granth Sahib, there's a chapter that says, Mathe tilak hat mala barna, logan ram khilona jana. Right? That they wear a tilak on their forehead, they have a mala in their hands, and they're wearing barna. They think God is like a toy. I'm doing these things, and then all of a sudden, I've attained God. Is it that simple? In fact, are we doing Guru Sahib a disservice if we look like his Sikhs and then we act like idiots? Right? I mean, isn't there some level of responsibility that we ought to have ourselves? I mean, it's very easy to laugh at this, but we do it. Right? We're laughing because we all know it's true. But yet, there's still hope. There's still hope. For example, Bhai Sukhwinder Singh. Who's heard of Bhai Sukhwinder Singh? One person, two people, 3 people, 4 people. 4 people out of about 100 people have heard of this guy. In February, he was killed. But you know why he was killed? Because in the UK, he saw a girl get mugged, and he said, as a Sikh, I have a responsibility to do something. So he goes, chases the muggers, gets stabbed by the 2 muggers, saves the girl. Who knows what would have happened to the girl otherwise? He saves the girl, gets stabbed fatally, and dies. The government of London, the government of England, the government of India, Shiromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee, they all recognized him as a martyr. And this just happened in February. So there's hope. It's not like everything's lost. Right? How many of you watch Hindi movies once in a while? It's okay to raise your hand. It's so totally okay. Okay, who's watched Rocket Singh? Okay. In the movie, do you remember what happens when he tries to get a loan without collateral? Like, he has nothing to give the guy. You know, normally when you have to go get a loan, right? So if you go buy a house in the United States, you have to give them a down payment. Right? So they let you take a loan on the rest of it. So he has nothing to give as collateral, but he wants to start a business. Do you remember what the guy says? Anybody remember?
He says that I've never met a Sikh who's like to eat.
Yeah, he said, I've never even heard of a Sikh who's stolen. Not just seen. He says, I've never heard of a Sikh who's stolen. It used to be in India that if a Sikh went to a courthouse and said something, they'd take it for granted. They'd be like, the Sikh said it, it must be true. Because Sikhs don't lie. And now we have Sikhs fighting with each other in courts all the time, right? So obviously one of them's lying. So we go from a place where Sikhs are respected to a point where, people say these people are the most trustworthy people in India. To a point where nobody's willing to trust them now. To we can't even trust our little kids because they're not going to cheat Chuck E. Cheese out of $1. But yeah, we have people like Paisab, who's, by the way, picture is going to be put in, or maybe has already been put in the museum at the Barset. And this guy's 28 years old. Some of us here are older than that. So it's not like it's unattainable. It's not like it can't happen. So let's switch gears. I think we all get the message from that. Most of us have heard of Paisab and Garrison. But how did Paisab's journey in Sikhi begin? Was he always so religious? Was he always such an amazing Gursikh? So here's a real life example. Paisab's law school exams are coming up. By the way, I don't know if this is true for me. I don't know if it's true for you. Whenever exams are coming up, I start remembering God a lot more. Right? Right? Every time I need something, I'm like, oh, Vaheguruji, please. I just want to score really well on that exam. Right? It's normal. Because who are we going to ask? We're going to ask the person that gives us everything. So it's okay to ask. Right? It's okay to ask these things. But, it's just ironic that we forget about him in day-to-day situations. So Paisab's law school exams are coming up, and to get into law school, and his, in India, I think the way the education system works is that you go to school and then you take exams at the end of your 3-year course, right? And so it's kind of like the British system. So it's not like you have, finals or midterms as often as we do here. So those exams are considered really important exams. So Paisab's father sends him a Gurkha side and says, do Japji side and Ras side every day, your exams will go well. How many of us have had our parents say, do more Path? Right? All the time, right? It's like, so how do we do this decision? So you got to keep in mind, Paisab's father is in another city. He sends the Gurkha via mail. Right? So it's not like Paisab's father's going to knock on the door. Did you do your Japji side today? It's not like there's accountability here. If Paisab says I did it, then either he's going to be telling the truth or not. And so that's his choice. So choice A is he says I'm going to do the Path every day, and you do it with love and conviction. Remember we talked about Jin Prem Kiyo Tin Hitra Payo. So when you do Path, if you do it with love and devotion, that's one option. The second option is that I think most of us fall in this category. Is we do our Path every day, where we're like, right? And we're already at the end. Right? Before we even know it. Sometimes when you're doing Path, right? Who's this happened to? You're doing Path, you don't even know when you get to the end. You're like, what happened to 40s like 16 to 23? Like, what happened to that? I'm like, oh, well, let's continue. Right? We're just like, oh, okay, I must have done them, right? I didn't end up here. If it's been 5 minutes, I must have done it. Who knows where they are? And choice C, and sometimes we do this too. When your parents say, do more Path, and you're like, yeah, you do it one day, and you're like, all right, they're happy now. All right, cool. I tricked them. I got the best of them. And you do it for a few days, and slowly your routine goes away. Right? You don't do it anymore. You forget. Or you get busy. So what did Paisab do? So he just became entrenched in Bani. Right? He did it because he loved. Remember we talked about you want to love God. You want to do things out of love. Because you're willing to do anything, right? You're willing to do anything. It doesn't seem like a chore anymore. Because you love it. It's not a chore. You're willing to do anything. So that's the difference. And by the way, you can also read this story in Paisab's autobiography, which is in English. So there's two examples that you can both go, everyone can go and read in English or Punjabi, whichever one they're more comfortable with. So what's the outcome? Paisab developed a love for Sikhi that went on to influence thousands of Sikhs to pick Amrit, read more Gurbani. He was one of two Sikhs in the 20th century to be given the title of Paisab, the other one being Paisab Veer Singh Ji. And here on the right hand side are hukamname from different Takhats giving him the title of Paisab. So like, you know, now we just call people Paisab, right? Before you had to earn it. Before you had to do something, and now we just call Paisab. Right? I see someone, oh, Paisab ki halat. Right? And, oh, by the way, let's not forget, his exams, they went well. It turned out okay. Right? He did well on those exams too. It's not like he became entrenched in Bani and then he forgot about the exams and the exams never happened. He took the exams, he did well. But he also read good Bani. He also developed a love for Sikhi. So let's go on to a life of another Sikh. I promise I'm almost done. Sant Teja Singh, I actually really like this example. Because I really see Sant Teja Singh as being influential in me being able to go to the college I went to. But Sant Teja Singh, he received his BA from government college, his LLB from Law College Lahore, his MA from Punjabi University Lahore, and he was graduated as class valedictorian, by the way. Right? And he's all like, this is all around 25, 30 years old. He's done all this already. Right? I'm 22 and I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow. Right? I can't imagine getting all those degrees. I'm like, oh, maybe in 3 years I'll go back to grad school. Maybe. So by 1905, he was actually appointed principal of Khalsa College, Amritsar. And that's, by the way, that's the campus. It's a beautiful campus. In 1906, he left India to go study in London. Right? How many of us have heard our parents say, oh, don't go far away from home to go to school? Right? It happens all the time. No, don't go far away. You don't want to go to the East Coast. You don't know what's going to happen to you. Right? It's like monsters live on the East Coast. You know. So he goes to London, right? He goes to London in 1906. Let's try to think about when the first plane happened. Think about this in context. In 1906, what was going on? In London, he attended University College at Cambridge. And you know, Cambridge and Oxford are the top two universities in England and some of the best in the world. So it's not like he just went to like some small college. He went to Cambridge. And he was the first person there to convince the administrators to allow a Sikh to wear dastar. You know, nowadays, we find it, we're like, oh, bache tang karte hain sir. Imagine what happened in 1906. It's there, a fellow student comes up to me, it's like, this is Cambridge, we're not like those people in America. We're not racist like them. You're never going to be able to get into Harvard. You're never going to be able to get in wearing your dastar there. So most of us say, oh, okay. Most of us who are even considering applying, we would be like, oh yeah, doing this dastar barn, right? We're like, oh, there's no reason to go. They're not going to let us wear the dastar. Let's not go there. But what does Sant Teja Singh do? Things to keep in mind at the time, there were only a few thousand Sikhs in the United States. There was no Gurdwara in the United States. Harvard is an Ivy League school. They don't like changing things. They do things the same way that they've done them for hundreds of years. And African Americans have only had the right to vote for 38 years. Right? So African Americans who have such a large proportion, or a large portion of the U.S. are, have just recently been given the right to vote. So could you imagine what a Sikh has to go through? So what did Sant Teja Singh Ji do? In 1908, he got admitted to Columbia, which is also another Ivy League school in New York, for a teaching program, a summer teaching program. And then he later went on to Harvard to get a master's in English. So great, story ends there, right? Happy ending, went to Harvard, great. First of all, before I go on, I just want to mention, he got his degree in English literature. I remember I took the SAT English literature test, I sucked at it. And I grew up in the United States. He got a master's in English literature from India, being from India, right? So it's not like he came here and chose to do the easy, complacent thing to do. He chose and took on a challenge. He did something that wasn't easy to do. But when he gets there, the struggle continues. He was able to convince the administrators, that I have to wear the star. So what happened back then? When he applied, they didn't have pictures or anything that had to be sent, right? It wasn't like you send an email and people see who you are, or you go on Facebook, you type in some Teja Singh and you see what he looks like, and you say rejected because you wear the star. The administrators let him in, and they're like, whoa, you're the same guy that applied? You're the same guy with 3 degrees that became a principal at such a young age? So then he fights and gets the right to wear the star. But then, his second trimester there, he doesn't have money to pay tuition. What do you do now? He's thousands of miles away from home, in a hostile territory, really, to be honest. And he doesn't have money now. What do you do? What would you do? This is where you guys can raise your hands now. So anyone? I'm going to wait. So go ahead. Yeah. You get a job. Okay. You've heard the story. So what does Santi do? He tells us, his wife, he says to his wife, he's like, do you really, is there anything that you feel lacking in our life? And he says, we came all this way, we came all the way from India to the United States, at least finish your degree. And he said, okay, Ardas karte hain. He did Ardas, right? With a true conviction. I'm sure people have heard Dr. Vance do Ardas. You can tell he feels it. When somebody feels their Ardas, you can tell. And he felt that Ardas, he did a heartfelt Ardas. And what's the outcome? The next morning, a professor comes to him and says, when somebody studies in a foreign land, sometimes you don't have money. So he gave him the tuition in 1911, or 1910, 1911, which was $60 at the time. Right? He gives them the money and says, whenever somebody else needs it, just give it to them. So he does Ardas the next morning. A professor, and this is not like some small professor, this is like a tenured professor at probably one of the most prestigious universities in the world, is coming up to him and saying, here's money, finish your degree. That's the power of Ardas. Oh, and just as a side note, Sant Teja Singh went on to play an instrumental role in establishing the first Gurdwara in the United States. He also helped organize some of the first Amrit Sanchars in the West. So it's not like this guy was just an academic, right? It's not like he just said, oh, I want to be able to wear the star so I can go to school, and that's it. I really want to get this degree in English literature. I love English literature. It wasn't like that. He went and he played an instrumental part in the community. And so today, we have, Captain Kamaljeet Singh and Captain Tejdeep Singh, who go and fight against the U.S. military. Could you imagine when you have a court case against the United States, could you imagine getting that brief and reading something like Kamaljeet Singh versus the United States of America? It's like the whole country's against you in that court brief. That's what it says. Or it says the Department of Defense, or the United States Army. Could you imagine that? And these guys did it just, this year. So it's not like it doesn't happen. But a lot of us are too afraid to go far away from school. A lot of us are too afraid to make decisions that are difficult. We're too afraid to make decisions. I don't know why. That's different for each one of us. Why is it? Can somebody tell me how many Jews there are in the world? So yeah, 2% of the world population, 25 million. About 25 million. So, Ashkenazi Jews, which is like a typical, it's a specific branch of Judaism, they account for 3% of the United States population in the 1900s. That's what, and so as 3% of the population, they're a really, really small minority. Yet, if you look at the Nobel Prize in Sciences, every time it's been won by a person from the United States, 27% of the time it's been an Ashkenazi Jew. Right? And if you look at the ACM Turing Award, which is basically the Nobel Prize in computer science, they've won it 25% of the time. Again, this community is not that big, 25 million. There are about 25 million Sikhs in the world. How many Nobel Prizes have we won? So, actually, I want to tell a story before I go to the next slide. There's only like a few slides left. But the story, say you're a Prajatik, right? So, kind of put yourself in this frame of thought real quick. You're a Prajatik, you go to someone's house, because the lady invites you every year to do kirtan at their house. And you go to their house, and you go and tell the lady's husband, "Ke tusi amrit chalo." And the guy says to you, "You keep on barking like a dog every year, coming and telling me that I need to learn, that I need to take amrit. Who the hell are you?" What do you do? What's your gut reaction? And here, raise your hand and say your gut reaction. Anyone? Nobody would feel bad? Everybody would be like, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'm a dog, right?" Right, that's what we would do? How many of us have heard of Bhai Jeevan Singh Ji? Right? This actually happened to Bhai Jeevan Singh Ji. So Bhai Sahib went to somebody's house and tells the person you should take Amrit. The person goes and calls him a dog. Think about the equivalent of that in English real quick. Right? It's a 5-letter word that we don't say very often, right? If somebody essentially calls you that, what do? The person standing next to Paisab that actually drove Paisab to that person's house got mad and starts defending Paisab and said, "How can you dare say that about Paisab?" Paisab gets mad at the guy defending him and says, "He's right. I'm only a dog in the Guru's court." That's the type of character that Sikhs are supposed to have. That's the type of character that we're meant to have. But it's not easy. I wish one day that I can have it. I wish. Hopefully stories like this can influence some of us to have it at least sometime. So I know what you're all thinking. This is a really long presentation. When's it going to be done? And we all have so much to do and so little time, and he just keeps on yakking up there. And sometimes this means that, we put our pot and simmer aside, right? We're like, I don't have time. I got this deadline, man. I got this paper I got to write. I got like a 10-page paper to write. It's due tomorrow. I didn't work on it. Yeah, I got to write it. It's due tomorrow. I can't do that extra 5 joke exams I told myself I was going to do this week. And so we don't do anything at all, right? We're like, "Oh, I can't do it, so might as well not even do one," right? Some of us are just like, "Oh, I'm not going to even do one." But what does Gurbani say? Gurbani says, "Kabir, ek kadi, aadhi kadi, aadhi hunte aad, bhagtan seti goshte, jo kine sola." So he says, Kabirji says, whether it's an hour, half an hour, half of that, whatever time you spend is worthwhile. So let's not get discouraged. If we don't have time, let's do as much as we can. Right? That's not, that's not, you know what they say? They say, when you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you need to do is stop digging. That's what we need to do. When we find ourselves in a hole, when we're already stuck for time, we need to stop digging. We need to stop saying, "Oh, instead of doing one, I want to do any." Stop. Just do as much as you can. And so now the question is, well, where do I start? And there are quite countless ways. Where do you start? What do you do first? It's not that simple, but it is simple at the same time. Bhai Gurdass says, "Charan sharan gur ek penda jaye chal, satgur kod penda aage hoye." Take one step. Let's take it together. Let's make that one step and say, from today on, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to think about things twice. I'm going to try to think about what the repercussions of this are as a Sikh. And believe me, if we take one step forward, Guru Sahib will take those countless steps forward to help us. Right? Satgur Sada De Aap Hai Pai. Guru Sahib is willing to have mercy on us. But we have to take a step. What is Guru Sahib going to do if we keep on ignoring him? So, that said, that's it. If I've said anything against Guru, please forgive me. I hope that somebody learned at least something from this. I learned a lot from putting it together. So, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.